You know this guy, Chris Landry of LandryFootball.com, joins us every week right here on your Louisiana Go Nation. It's all build up to the Fiesta Bowl, rolling downhill, of course, towards Arizona. We'll be there, of course, with all your coverage. This guy right here, been breaking down the nights there in the film room, though. You talk about the quarterbacks first for LSU. They're going to have a full day at work, okay? You know, they got to clock in for this one and bring the lunch pail because they got worked, really, at Texas A&M. And now you're down your two best corners. No Christian Fulton because of an ankle injury. And then, of course, Greedy Williams off to the NFL, not going to play in the bowl game. So now you have to plug in some of these young Cubs here for the LSU Tigers. Who are you relying on, and who do you see maybe stepping up to the plate?
Well, I think in addition just to the young guys, I think with the added preparation bowl time, you can play a lot of put in a little bit more zone coverage looks, which is not ideally what they like to do. Dave Aranda likes to play a lot of man coverage, but they run a lot of crossing routes, which is a really good man beater. So I think you'll see them zone up a little bit, but they'll mix things up. The key is you've got to play good team defense. I think in their nickel and their dime looks, they're going to have to be very successful. What this does, it kind of accelerates the need for getting some of those younger guys having to step up and fill in those roles. But as you mentioned now, you're down two guys. As I've said last time, it's an opportunity for young guys to step up and be able to, it's the first entry into their off season, into next season. So it's a big time challenge, but I think you got to do it as a team unit. I think it's how well you play up front, your linebackers play, how well they drop, how well your safeties play and help out in coverage. And I think we'll see some more zone. This is going to be a fun game because, you know, if to use a basketball analogy, Central Florida wants to make this a little bit more of an up-tempo game. They want to push the tempo and they want to score points, and that's really not where LSU's the more the physical, the rebounding team, half-court team. They want to play a little bit more in the phone booth. So it's going to be a contrast in styles, and styles are always make the fights, and I think the styles will dictate who has the edge here.
These quarterbacks, I said they were young. Who specifically, do you see anyone on that side of the ball? I mean, Kerry Vincent Jr., it was not a good day in College Station. Is there someone else that we should be looking forward to that should maybe show up? Remember, 2 years ago, all of a sudden at the Citrus Bowl, this guy starts flashing. Devin White, out of nowhere, it seemed like. He finally bought in. He was a linebacker. He bought into the system. Do you see anyone like that maybe flashing this time around? Listen, it's
hard to say at this point, but absolutely I see guys, because bowl practices are like a spring practice. So what happens in spring practice? Guys step up and they become big factors. They're not in the too deep. They're not going to be a factor, and all of a sudden they're ready to make an impact. Mention Devin White. That's something that jogged a memory. That's what happens in bowl practice. It's an extra spring. So somebody will have that opportunity. It's not like you're preparing in a 1 week or even a 2 week situation. You've got a lot of time to give guys a chance to step up in practice, get more reps, and then make their mark. And it's really hard to say who that's going to be. That's kind of what the game is about. But I think it's going to bring about the spotlight's going to shine on somebody, and it usually does, positively or negatively. But I think you can build upon it. I mean, I think even if it's bad play at certain points, you can build upon it in the offseason. So I don't think, to me, it's not any one guy. It's collectively a lot of the young guys that maybe didn't get as many reps in practice week in and week out that are now, because you know who's going to be there, and more importantly, who's not going to be there in this entire bowl practice. We're going to have a lot of opportunities for somebody to, or 2 or 3 guys to really emerge and step up and have an impact.
And by the way, a big emphasis when you play zone, when you're sitting back, you got to step up and make plays, and you got to step up and you got to wrap up and tackle well. And that may be just a little bit different. This is going to be a different style game. Is there a Central Florida comparison that you would make style-wise that maybe LSU has played in the past?
You know, we were talking a little bit before we went on air. It's a little bit different in terms of their route concepts, but Ole Miss does some things that I think in terms of how you got to pattern match. You know, the bowl game at Texas Tech, I think, has some similarities. Now, you know, what Central Florida does with their route concepts, get a little bit deeper and run crossing routes, whereas you get just killed with screens against Texas Tech. But a couple of things you brought up. Yeah, when you play zone, it certainly gives you an opportunity to pattern match a little bit better, to siphon off players to another defender as they come in and out of your zone. All zone defense is playing man coverage within a zone concept within an area. And so I think personally, I think it's a good opportunity when you play opponents like this that you don't face during the season, they're not in the conference. It gives you an opportunity to do some things a little bit differently, both from, on the defensive side, how you play your fronts, maybe a little bit different, how you play coverage in the back end, that you can call upon in the future so that when you're working on it next year and you got some of the guys, you can call upon that. So absolutely, you got to be able to tackle well in man or zone, but to be able to come up and fill is going to be really important. Those crossing routes, they can get you with those, and they work that layered passing game, and then they like to go vertical, but that's where the pass rush and the blitz pressure is going to be a big factor. Obviously, the health at quarterback for them has been an issue. You lose a really good, Mackenzie Milton was a special guy that can make more plays with his feet. This young guy comes in, though. This is an offense that's built around getting the ball out of the hands of the quarterback quickly, so they'll be able to move the football. It'll be key for LSU to be able to do a good job forcing from third and longs and then getting off the field in third downs and obviously running the football and kind of compressing this game a little bit and limiting Central Florida's offensive possessions.
And by the way, I think a key factor to this, not only is it a New Year's Six bowl, it's a game inside a dome, okay? You got a lot of young pups there on the back end. They need to be able to communicate, of course, without communication. So the hand signals, however you do it, they need to communicate well. Who are those guys going to be tracking on this Central Florida offense, and who do we need to be watching out for in this game?
Well, I think they've got a multitude of players. I think their backs are really good in the passing game. Their slot receivers are really good and can match up, and their outside guys can get vertical. So they've got a lot of guys. You bring up something that's important, the communication issue, of being able to make checks, and without veteran guys, you're a little bit more susceptible, but you have more time to work on it. So again, I stress this as a good challenge, because this is something that gives these young guys an opportunity to be involved in the front line of communicating, taking ownership in this game from a preparation standpoint that maybe they would have been in more of a role where they were in the sub packages. Now they're up front. What's going to really be interesting to see is, I know you've kept a close log on it, but how well LSU travels and the noise in that, yep. It's a game that LSU's not usually used to being in. So it's a different side. It's good. And I don't know how many of those Central Florida fans go to this
they have
game.
a big enrollment. They're going to be excited about this
but
one.
I just wonder how many of them are going to go. They might. I'm not saying that they're not. They've got next Arizona State. They've got in Arizona State. They're neck right. and neck for the largest enrollment. How many of them are really gung-ho enough to go to, not going to Atlanta, not going down the road, but to go all the way to Arizona? Maybe they will.
Well, remember, they've got a national championship to play for, right? Sure. I mean, if they're undefeated, they're going to claim another national championship up on the stadium. They're
going to run out of space in that stadium if they keep claiming these national titles.
All right, back on the rails. One key matchup that you're just giddy about, you can't wait to see, LSU, Central Florida. What do you want to see on tape, and how do you want to see one of these matchups play?
Well, when these matchups, always focus on, this offensive Central Florida and how LSU is going to be able to match up. I kind of like to go the other way and look and say, all right, let's see what this LSU offense can do in terms of being able to manage this game, quarterback runs, the entire running game, being able to control this game at the line of scrimmage. That's where LSU's edge is, much like it was. And I don't want to make the comparison because Texas Tech is different than Central Florida, but stylistically, this is how I think LSU wants to play this game. Physical, run the football, control the game, and that's where I think Central Florida doesn't match up very well. I will say this. It's going to be a highly motivated Central Florida team, we know that. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I would not sell LSU short in terms of being ready to play. I would think they're going to play. They're going to play a little bit with an edge. If nothing else, they'll look at it as an embarrassing loss. And people are right. It's a no-win situation for LSU because if you win, you should beat Central Florida. And if you don't, how the heck did that happen again? Twice, and now we got to hear these guys. You're going to hear a lot of that. So I think this is going to be one of the more watched bowl games around, because you're going to have the whole, we know Central Florida and LSU fans, but around the country, I want to see what Central Florida is going to do. I'm going to see if they're going to knock that Central Florida team out and shut them up. So there's going to be a polarizing effect to this game. I want to see how Central Florida can match up in the trenches against LSU, conversely how LSU deals with it. I really don't care to see LSU get into a shootout type of matchup with this team. I really am not looking forward to that.
Orgeron said something very interesting this week, right? He said, look, we lost our last bowl game. How many times does Coach O get fired up? Oh, he's going to have those guys ready to go.
He gets fired up.
Exactly.
He gets fired up jumping out of bed every day.
Well, with a few monsters in between, right? Okay, here's a question for you that I actually really want to know from a game plan standpoint. You come to your best ball game was against Georgia, right? What they do differently? Up tempo. Now they grinded them out, right? On the ground, you can say that. You look at the stats, it's just the box score, and it was the ground game that wore down Georgia. But what it doesn't show was they were going up tempo, basically. If you go up tempo and you get a 3 and out, and then UCF gets into their tempo, you're in a whole lot of trouble. So really, you almost have to go and maybe play the time of possession game, which is what I would guess Coach O and Steve Ensminger would do. Not to say that I know what they're going to do, but if you mess up and you try and go tempo and it backfires in a huge way, and the Golden Knights are going to have, or the Knights or whatever they call themselves these days, they're going to have a lot of momentum on their side.
Yeah, I think game plan wise, it's to be able to shorten it and be able to win it at the line of scrimmage. That's where LSU's advantage is. It doesn't mean that they can't win it another way. I just think that the percentages are better by being more physical. I mean, it's no different than, say, looking at like an Alabama-Oklahoma. Why would Alabama want to get into a shootout with Oklahoma? They can win a shootout, but why not control the game and increase your percentages from maybe 60 to 80%? That's kind of how I look at it from an LSU standpoint, is control it at the line of scrimmage. I do think you have to mix up tempos a little bit. I think you can wear out Central Florida, but I think being able to be physical, make this team stay on the field defensively, wear them out, and if they're on the field, then the offense is off the field. And I think you keep your defense a little bit fresher, and I think you can come after a little bit more. And I think they're going to come after the quarterback and try to force him to make some plays under pressure, something that, quite frankly, they don't see on a regular basis in the AAC. There's just not the type of defensive front players that can rush the passer and create the type of havoc against the quarterback. And in a lot of respects, it has a little bit of an offensive feel to it in that league, where it is about tempo, and defenses are always playing from a chase position.
Can't wait to watch it. Getting already revved up here with Chris Landry of LandryFootball.com. Go check out all his stuff. He's got plenty more breaking down, of course, the Knights and the LSU Tigers. Maybe some Tigers you're going to see in the NFL very soon. That's what he does there on LandryFootball.com, and, of course, right here on your Louisiana Go Nation.